Hello everyone. Today's topic is about skeletal system. We will see about anatomy of skeletal system. This is lecture outline, learning objectives, and skeletal system. Skeletal system or osteology is a part of anatomy dedicated to study the bone, its formation, form, structure, and function. So this is a part of anatomy. It is concerned with the study of bone, its formation, structure, and function is called osteology. Skeletal means dried off body, which is almost solid, and skeletal system is composed of bone, cartilage, and joints and ligaments. So bone, every single bone is an organ, and cartilage, joints, every joint, ligament is an organ, but the form or the composition of all bone, cartilage, joint, and ligaments is considered as system. So we can, when we see these four parts, we can consider it as a system, okay, a system. So that's why we say it skeletal system. The other is each individual bone is an organ. A skeletal system accounts for about 20% of our body weight. So about 20% of it weighs about 20% of our total body weight. So the function of bone is to support. So as supportion, it provides hard. Our bone provides hard framework that supports the weight of the body. So support for the weight of the study, and is just a framework. So by the way, without bone, we are a collection of muscles, okay, we are a collection of muscles, skeletons, and other parts. So we can our body structure or framework comes from the bones. The second function is protection. The third one is that movement. Protection means it protects some delicate organs, very important organs are protected by our bones. The other is movement. By the way, bone, joints, muscles, nerves are important for to assist for the in general for the movement. So bone also important for movement. The other is bone is important for blood cell formation. In the bone, in the medullary cavity or marrow cavity, there is a red bone marrow. This red bone marrow is used for to form blood cells. So bone is important for blood cell formation. The other is the storage of minerals. Bone is used to store calcium and phosphorus, minerals like calcium and phosphorus. So bone is also important to serve as attachment for muscles. As you know, almost all or most of skeletal muscles are attached bone to bone, except some exceptions. So majority of muscles are attached from one bone to the other bone. So bone to bone attachment, especially skeletal muscles. So bone is one of an important structure which help muscles to attach on it. So the other is bone is important to storage energy in the form of fats. So the yellow bone marrow is yellow bone marrow is found also in the bone. So yellow bone marrow one is important for energy formation. The other is yellow bone marrow is important also for blood cell formation in the case of emergency situation. But this one is it will produce all times. So so this is function of bones. The other is classification of bones. Bones are classified based on their shape rather than size. So based on their shape, we can classify bones as long, short bone, flat bone, and irregular bone. Irregular bone. So long bones. When you see long bones are considerably longer than their width. So bones of arms, legs, hands, feet are considered as long bones. For instance, if you take from arm, if you take humerus is its length is greater than width, so we can consider it as long bone. For instance, from leg, if you take femur length is greater than width, so we can say long bones. But in the wrist bones like carpal bones are not considered as bones almost. For instance, if you take scaphoid bone, their width and length is almost proportional, so that is short bone. So the second type of bone is short bones. Short bone is roughly cube shaped means almost their width and height is almost equal. So the bones of wrists and ankles are considered as short bones. Wrists are about carpal bones about 16, and ankles are about 14. So from two hands. So these bones are considered as short bones. We will see in detail what are carpal bones and ankle bones. The third one is flat bones. Flat bones are thin, flattened, and usually curved. And an example is ribs. Ribs are thin and curved. Shoulder blades also, and also cranial bones like parietal bone, like frontal bone, and occipital bone are considered as cranial bones. So this is considered as flat bones. The other is irregular bones. The fourth one is irregular bones. These bones have a variety of shapes and many surface markings for muscle attachment. So having different shapes and having having different types of in and down shapes. So vertebrae is regular bones, hip bones, and fascial bones. So hip bones are having a variety of shapes. Fascial bones is also, and vertebrae bones like different cervical, thoracic vertebrae, and lumbar vertebrae. Like these vertebrae are regular bones. So this type example is considered as irregular bones. The other is in addition to four type of bones, the other is also there is additional bones. Like the first one, sesamoid bone. Sesamoid bone is a special type of short bone. Denoting a small nodular bone embedded in the tendon and joint capsule. So an example is patella or kneecap, which is found on the between the tibia and the femur. So this is considered as sesamoid bone. The second one is also, or the other one is also pneumatic bone. Pneumatic bone is a bone which have empty space within them. So between two bones there is empty space. This space are called pneumatic bone. So the example of pneumatic bone is, for instance, this one is pneumatic bone. For instance, this bone is maxillary sinus. Maxillary sinus having cavity within it. So as an example is like maxillary bone, and this is also frontal bone. This is also frontal sinus. So frontal sinus are also one example of pneumatic bone. So short, flat, and regular bones are all made of sponge bone, covered with thin layer of compact bone. So short bones, flat bones, regular bones are all made up of sponge bone, covered with thin layer of compact bone. Whereas in the case of long bones, the compact bone is hard and thick layer. So this is all about the classification of bones. So classification of bones based on shape, having four major bones, and additionally sesamoid and pneumatic bone are considered. So when we say an example, For instance, this is the parental bone. This parental bone is considered as flat bone because it is curved and thin. The other is regular bone. This is thoracic vertebra. This vertebra is regular bone because many irregular surface or variety of surfaces for muscle attachment. Okay, for muscle attachment. And the other is short bones. Short bones are carpal bones of the wrist are considered as short bones. The other is humerus. This is long bone, so its length is greater than its width. Carpal bones are almost their width and length is proportional. So this is an example. The other structures of the typical long bone, with few exception, all bones in the body have the same general structure. So almost all bones in the body have diaphysis, epiphysis, and metaphysis structure. Epiphysis is a shaft or forms the long axis of the long bone, whereas epiphysis is the end of long bone, and metaphysis are the areas between epiphysis and diaphysis is known as metaphysis. The area between epiphysis and diaphysis is metaphysis. So include the epiphyseal plate in growing bones. So epiphyseal plate is found on the metaphysis. So this is, for instance, long bone. If you say this is long bone, so this shaft is considered as diaphysis, whereas the end is considered as epiphysis, and between the diaphysis and the epiphysis there is the narrow constricted part. This constricted part is known as metaphysis. So articular cartilages over the joint surface acts as friction reducer and shock absorber. Articular cartilages found on the end of these bones, long bones. On these bones, these articular cartilages found between two adjoining bones, and by that time when we are jump something like that, it reduces or it absorbs shock, and also when we are walking it reduces friction. So let me show you in picture. So medullary cavity is a marrow cavity which is found within bone. I will show you. So let us show you in picture. So okay, before that let me finish this one and we will go there. A membrane, bone membrane. So bone membrane is divided into majorly two: endostem and periostem. Periostem is the outer layer, endostem is the inner layer. So endostem is the lining of marrow cavity and central canals of osteons. Is osteogenic bone producing, containing bone deposing cells and bone destroying cells. Bone deposing cells are osteoblasts and bone destroying cells are osteoclasts. So this contains this one. The other is periostem. Periostem is a tough membrane covering the bone but not cartilage. So richly supplied by nerves and blood vessels, secured to the underlying by perforating fibers or sharp-edged layers. That means periostem is secured or attached to the bone by fibers, tiny fibers. This tiny fibers is known as sharp-edged fiber. So periostem divided into two layers. The one is fibrous layer, the other is osteogenic layer. Fibrous layer is a dense irregular connective tissue, whereas osteogenic layer is rich in bone cells. So let me show you. This is, by the way, long bone. Long bone is having three structures. For instance, this is proximal, this is distal area. So we can divide into three. The shaft is considered as diaphysis, whereas the end part, from this one is the end part is considered as epiphysis. This part, but this constricted part is considered as metaphysis. So diaphysis, metaphysis, and epiphysis. So epiphysis these two end. This is proximal epiphysis, this is distal epiphysis. So this constricted part is known as metaphysis. So we can divide into three: epiphysis, metaphysis, and diaphysis. So in the metaphysis, this region is metaphysis, but this layer, This white layer is known as epiphyseal plane. Epiphyseal line is a line which is found on the metaphysis. So this line is important for growth in length. Okay, this line is important for which help us to grow in length. Okay, in length. So after 25 years, this line will be closed or stopping producing cartilage. So after 25 years, it will stop these functions, and our growth in length will be limited. So next, the membrane. We have two membrane. This is the outer membrane, so peristem. This peristem is outer covering, whereas this is endostem. This endostem is covering the inner layer of the bone, the cavity, the marrow cavity. So the blue one is articular cartilage. This is important to reduce friction and shock absorb. And this is a cartilage, the same thing. This is articular cartilage. The other is in long bone. Most are compact bone. So this one is compact bone. So only in the ends, in the two ends, this one and this one, only in the two ends are sponge bone. Sponge bone are found in the two ends. So this is sponge bone, but others are compact bone. So this sponge bone contains red bone marrow. So the other is this cavity is known as medullary cavity. This cavity also contains red and yellow bone marrow. So medullary cavity. This medullary cavity contains yellow bone marrow in adults. So this is contains as yellow bone marrow, whereas this one is red bone marrow, and this is the same thing. This is in old age. When our age increases, epiphyseal line becomes indistinct. So because the cartilage becomes changed into bone, so it becomes indistinct. So our growth also limited. Growth in length also limited. So this is medullary cavity, or we can say marrow cavity, a place where yellow bone marrow is found. And so having this concept, when we cut the bones microscopically, it seems like just like this. So this is bones. So this is known as osteons. This is blood vessels, and this is concentric. This one is concentric lamina. So this one is central canal, and this one is perforating canal. This is perforating fibers, sharpening fibers. As I told you, sharpening fiber or perforating fibers, tiny fibers which connects or attaches the peristem of the bone and the bone itself. The other is this is perosteal artery and vein, perosteal blood vessels. This one is outer fibrous layer. This one is the inner osteogenic layer, and this is the outer fibrous layer. And this one is a sponge bone, whereas this one is a compact bone. This area is known as compact bone, whereas this one is sponge bone. So this area is known as inner circumferential lamella. This is known as trabeculae. So this one is a medullary cavity, and this is cross section. This is bone. So this is section just like this from this type of bones. And finally this is osteocyte cell. This is the osteocyte cell. This is a cell. So a place where this is known as canaliculae, or a place where osteocyte cell found or located is called lacunae. A site is lacunae, but this one is osteocyte cell. The other is this is very important picture. So structure typical bone, as I told you, this is epiphysis, this one is diaphysis, this one is epiphysis, this one is epiphysis, and this one is epiphysis. This constricted part is metaphysis. This one is metaphysis. In metaphysis there is epiphyseal line. This is peristem, compact bone, and this is medullary cavity. Medullary cavity is lined by endostem membrane. So if you cut this section, and if you see just like this, this is known as endosteum. This is compact bone, whereas this one is sponge bone. Sponge bone. This is a blood vessel or artery. So if you see just like this, this is yellow bone marrow. This is yellow bone marrow, which fits the medullary cavity or marrow cavity, and this is a perforating or sharp-edged layer which connects peristem layer or peristem membrane with the bone. And nutrient arteries are this one, penetrates the middle of the diaphysis and going to the inner side. So this is so this is endosteum. So this is yellow bone marrow, whereas red bone marrow is found just like this. The other is bone tissue or osseous tissue. Bone tissue is consists of widely separated cells surrounded by large amount of extracellular matrix. So as I told you, bone is a connective tissue. So connective tissue, one of the special characteristics of connective tissue is having widely separated cells, having a small number of cells and widely separated cells, but in between there is large amount of extracellular matrix. So bone tissue has both organic and inorganic components. Chemical composition: healthy bone is half as strong as steel. It is strong just like steel and resisting compression, but equally strong in resisting tension. So compression is half and resisting tension is equal with steel. So the bone is composed of the following structures. So bone is having organic and inorganic components. When you see organic components or organic components, bone is made up of three things. The one is cells. So from all 35% of bone substance is made up of organic components. These organic components are cells, fibers, and ground substance. The organic substance, particularly collagen, contribute the flexibility and tensile strength that allow bone resistance, stretching, and twisting. So organic substance like collagen contribute flexibility and tensile strength of the bone, which allow the bone to resist stretching and twisting. So collagen is very important to give tensile strength and flexibility. Next, about 65% of the bone structure is inorganic components. These inorganic components are minerals like phosphate, calcium phosphate, and calcium carbonate. So these inorganic components, or this one, provides bone hardness, makes the bone to be hard. So bone is not completely solid. Since it has small spaces for vessels and bone marrow. For instance, bone marrow is found within the diaphysis, yellow bone marrow, red bone marrow within the sponge bone. So sponge bones are having different types of spaces, and also blood vessels like nutrient artery and other different types of arteries, metaphyseal artery, epiphyseal artery, and nutrient arteries are penetrating the bone, and this penetrated area forms spaces. So due to different types of spaces and some fluids, bone cannot be considered as completely solid. So sponge bone has many spaces. Compact bone has very few spaces because of penetrating blood vessels. So having this concept, based on gross observation of bone has two different structures. So when we see that based on two appearances, macroscopic appearance and microscopic appearance. In both cases, the bone is divided into compact bone and sponge bone. And microscopically, when you see the bone, the outer layer is compact bone. So the dense outer layer that looks smooth and solid to the naked eye, our eye, is called compact bone. It is the outer layer and provides strength, makes up the shaft of long bones. All shafts of long bones is a compact bone. So and external layers of all bones. Compact bone is like sponge bone, wherever it is, sponge bone, flat bone, regular bone, it forms the external layers of or bones, and all bones of shaft make up the shaft of long bones. In long bones, the diaphysis is or shaft is compact bone, and also compact bone serve as external layer for all bones, and resists stress produced by weight and movement. So it's very important to give for resistance and to give strength compact bone. The other is sponge bone. Sponge bone or cancellous bone. Sponge bone consists of trabeculae, honeycomb of small needle-like, containing bone marrow for blood cell production and fat storage. Containing marrow for blood cell production and fat storage. So sponge bone is having trabeculae like honeycomb, like small needle-like appearance, containing bone marrow for blood cell production and fat storage. It forms most of the structure of short bone, flat bone, and regular bones, and the epiphysis of long bones. So sponge bone is found on short bones, flat bones, and regular bones, whereas the two sides or epiphysis of long bones are formed from sponge bone. Sponge bone tissue is light and supports and protects bone marrow due to light and its smooth structure having bone marrow. Particularly, the sponge bone contains red bone marrow, and microscopically the same thing. Bone is divided into compact bone and sponge bone. So this part is sponge bone, whereas this one is compact bone. So this is lamella, whereas a place where this osteocyte located is lacunae. This is osteoclast cells, whereas this is osteocyte cells, and the line is known as canaliculi. So this is trabeculae. So this is the blood vessels. So this line is known as Volkmann's canal or perforating canal. This canal, but whereas this canal is known as central canal or Harvardian canal. So this is sponge bone, and whereas this is the compact bone. So this circle one, this is the layer is known as osteal or Harvardian system. And so next we will see bone cells. Bone tissue contains four types of cells. The first type of cell is osteogenic cell or stem cell, or you can say osteoprogenitors. So osteogenic cells are undifferentiated cells, are found in bone tissues in contact with the endostem, and the periostem. So these two osteogenic cells are found in both endostem layer plus periostem layer, and can divide it to replace themselves and can become osteoblasts and osteoclasts. So osteogenic cells can be divided and to replace themselves and became osteoblast cells and osteoclasts. So found the inner layer of periostem as well as endostem. On the inner side of the periostem, the outer layer, and inner side of endostem, the inner layer. So the second layer is osteoblasts. Osteoblasts are mature bone building cells that synthesize and secrete unmineralized ground substance or matrix. So by the way, osteoblasts comes from the osteogenic cells. So these cells are producing they are mature bone building cells. They build mature bones like osteocytes. So how to they have ability to synthesize and secrete unmineralized ground substance. So they are matrix. unmineralized matrix or unmineralized ground substance. So they are deposing cells, matrix deposing cells. They will depose matrix, they will depose, or we can say unmineralized ground substance, and after that, when this became dry, they will form later mature bone cells. Will form mature bone cells. This mature bone cells is known as osteocytes. So the other is osteoblasts can't divide. So the third cell is osteocyte cell. Osteocytes are already mature bone cells. There is no longer secrete matrix. These osteoblasts are matrix secreting cells, plus they will form mature bones. These mature bones are called osteocytes. But osteocytes are already mature bones. They are matured. So they no longer secrete matrix. There is no longer secrete matrix. So these osteocytes are maintain structural integrity of surrounding bone matrix. Only one osteocyte is enclosed in lacunae. As I told you, in bones there is a place, location is called lacunae. So in one lacunae there is one osteocyte for one lacunae. So the principal cells of bone tissue which detects strain. So the osteocytes are having important function that is important to detect strain. When osteocytes dies, the surrounding bone matrix is reabsorbed by osteoclasts. So when these osteocytes are dies, the surrounding bone matrix is reabsorbed by osteoclasts. So osteoclasts are bone degrading cells, which important for to shape the bone, to form the canal or the marrow cavity by degrading osteoclast cells. So the fourth type of cell is osteoclast cells. These osteoclast cells are matrix dissolving cells, but osteoblasts are matrix building cells. So that one is osteoblasts are matrix producing cells, whereas osteoclasts are matrix dissolving cells. So these osteoclasts are huge cells that are derived from fused monocyte or white blood cell. So located on a reabsorbed surface of the bone matrix called Hauschup's lacunae. Mostly these cells are located on a reabsorbed surface or degrading surface of the bone matrix. This matrix is known as Hauschup's lacunae. So one of the functions of osteoclasts are used for bone growth, remodeling, and healing. The one is used for bone growth. Bone growth is important for growth in weeds. Osteoclasts are important for growth in weeds, whereas epiphyseal line is important for bone growth in lungs. Epiphyseal line is used for bone growth in lungs, whereas osteoclasts are important for bone growth in weeds. Additionally, osteoclasts is important for remodeling and healing. When the bone is breaks up, it will form debris, and it will swell and will form debris, and it will be unshaped. So these osteoclast cells are by making slough, so they will make or reshape or remodel our bones to become smooth or to become shapeful. So in bone reabsorption at surfaces such as endosteum. So they mostly osteoclasts found on endosteum area, because they will degrade or dissolve the area around that. They will make the marrow cavity or medullary cavity to be widened. So that case, the width of the bone will be increases, because the bone matrix deposits on the outer surface, whereas osteoclasts are degraded on the inner surface. So when the inner one is degraded, it will increase the marrow cavity, and additionally the matrix increase on the outer surface, the bone width will be increases. So osteoclasts are multi-nucleated. As we know, nucleus, some cells have one nucleus, the others are binucleus, the others are multinucleus. So osteoclast cells are multinucleated cells. So when we see blood and nerve supply of the bone, blood supply of the bone have the first one is having nutrient arteries. Nutrient arteries are enter through bone by a space or by hole through nutrient foramen, by foramen through nutrient foramen, so they will enter the bone. So supplies the compact bone of diaphysis and red bone marrow. So red bone marrow, the compact bone diaphysis gets nutrients from the nutrient artery, whereas the second group of arteries are metaphyseal artery and epiphyseal artery. Both metaphyseal and epiphyseal arteries supply red bone marrow and bone tissue of epiphysis. So red bone marrow and bone tissue of epiphysis supplied by metaphyseal and epiphyseal arteries. Mostly epiphyseal artery supplies epiphyseal region, supplies metaphyseal region, whereas the first group, the second and the third group, and the fourth group is peritoneal arteries, preosteal arteries. Preosteal arteries supply periosteum area, branches of nutrient and epiphyseal artery, branches of nutrient and epiphyseal artery. Maybe the periosteal artery branched from this epiphyseal and nutrient arteries. So let us see. This is the bone. So this artery is known as epiphyseal artery and epiphyseal vein. So epiphyseal artery and epiphyseal artery supplies epiphyseal region. So metaphyseal artery and metaphyseal artery supply this metaphyseal region. The vein is also drain this region, and this vein also drains this region. And this is medullary cavity. Medullary cavity is supplied. By the way, this is the nutrient artery and vein. This nutrient artery is enters through the nutrient foramen and supplies this region, the medullary cavity and the compact bone. So the other is the periosteal artery and periosteal vein. Vein is used for drainage, whereas periosteal artery supplies the periosteal region. So periosteal artery or vein may be the branch for a nutrient artery. So this is the blood supply of the bone. Finally, bone formation. When we see bone formation, or embryonic connective tissue begins as mesenchyme. So bone formation is termed as osteogenesis, or ossification is known as bone formation. So the bone formation begins when mesenchymal cells provide the template for subsequent ossification. So prior to week 8, during our pregnancy, or when we are embryo, period to week 8, and we can divide week 8 and beyond. So period to or before week 8, embryonic skeleton is comprised of hyaline cartilage and fibrous membrane. Then after 8 weeks, the bone tissue begins to develop. Then majority of fibrous and cartilaginous structure eventually replaced with bone after week 8. So how to change into bone, we will see. So the fibrous membrane before week 8 changed into membrane bone, or by the process is known as intra-membranous ossification, whereas hyaline cartilage changed into cartilage bone by process of endochondral ossification. So as we said that hyaline cartilage and fibrous membrane before week 8, it will change it into bone after week 8. So how to change it into bone? Fibrous membrane by through intramembranous ossification, whereas hyaline cartilage changed into bone by doing endochondral ossification. As you know, just like this. So 12 weeks old fetus, the red areas represent bones that are forming or calcified. These red areas are calcified, whereas translucent areas, these translucent areas represent cartilage, which is uncalcified. So the cartilage becomes calcified, it will be changed into bone. So let us see intramembranous ossification. Intramembranous ossification forms the flat bones of the skull. like mandible, clavicle. And an ossification center forms from mesenchymal cells, and they convert to osteoblasts and lay down the osteoid matrix. Because they are osteoblasts, they will produce matrix. So flat bones are formed by intra-membranous ossification, whereas most of the bones of the body is formed by endochondral ossification, by changing cartilage or healing cartilage into bone. This one is by changing fibrous membrane into bone, flat bone. So this one is the first step in endochondral ossification, is the development of the cartilage model. We will see the first step is development of cartilage model. So let us see first intramembranous ossification, how flat bones will be formed. So step 1, the development of ossification center. Osteoclasts secrete osteogenic extracellular matrix. So these cells are known as osteoblast cells. These osteoblast cells secrete this white thing is known as extracellular matrix. So these osteoblast cells secrete their extracellular matrix. This matrix will be produced by these cells, osteoblast cells. So this is the outer collagen fiber, and this is the mesenchymal cells, connective tissue. This is the ossification center. So this is blood capillary. So in the second step, calcification will be occur. Calcium and other mineral salts are deposited, and extracellular matrix calcifies or hardens. This means that this is bone matrix. So when the calcium and other minerals are deposited in this bone matrix can be hardened or can be calcified. So it will become hard or dry. Like cement. After that, when became 3, the formation of trabeculae will be formed. Extracellular matrix develops into trabeculae that fuse to form sponge bone. So this is extracellular matrix. This extracellular matrix forms this trabeculae and form sponge bone. This sponge bone is formed through ossification and through the perforation of these blood vessels. So sponge bone, trabeculae, and osteoblasts, which was on this the inner osteoblasts form this the inner layer. Osteoblasts form the inner layer in the endostem layer. This is osteoblasts. So this is the mesenchymal condensation. So this is finally the development of the periostem. This is periostem. The development of periostem. Mesenchyme as the periphery of the bone develops into periostem. So this one is mesenchyme, as I told you, this is mesenchyme. So mesenchyme changed into periostem. Periostem as this layer. So this is compact thin. This is thin compact layer, but the inner one is sponge layer. So this process is known as intramembranous ossification. How flat bones are formed. Flat bones are the much of the inner part is sponge bone, whereas thin outer layer is compact bone. So this is how flat bones like parental bone formed, just like this process. Step 1, step 2, step 3 and step 4. The other is endochondral ossification. Endochondral ossification is like long bones and compact bones will be produced. So the first step in the endochondral ossification is development of cartilage model. So this is cartilage model. So this is healing cartilage. The outer is periostem. So this is diaphysis, this is epiphysis, and this is metaphysis. So development of cartilage model is the first step. So mesenchymal cells develop into chondroblasts, and which form the cartilage model. So mesenchymal, the first cells are mesenchymal cells. Mesenchymal cells will produce the chondroblasts, and chondroblasts, by producing matrix, they will form cartilage model. This cartilage model. Then the cartilage model, growth of cartilage model will be formed. So this is uncalcified extracellular matrix and calcified extracellular matrix. So this calcification will be occur to change into bone. So the third step is development of primary ossification center. This is very important. The development of primary ossification center in this region of the diaphysis, the bone tissue has replaced most of the cartilage. So in the middle area, in this area, so the bone tissue, this white area, bone tissue replaces the diaphysis region, this diaphysis region. So and when the blood vessels perforate this region, this marrow cavity will be produced. So this region or hole or marrow cavity, the process of this marrow cavity production is called primary ossification center. So primary ossification center is created on the diaphysis, on the shaft. So this is so development of ossification center is the third step, whereas the development of the marrow or medullary cavity is on this area. So this is clearly medullary cavity or bone marrow is formed on this region by osteoclast cells. Osteoclast cells, by dissolving or by perforating this region, they will widen this area. So by reshaping this area and by perforating this area, this marrow cavity is formed by osteoclast cells. So marrow cavity is fully formed on the step 4. So so the development of secondary ossification center, this occurs in the epiphysis. By the way, primary ossification center is formed by diaphysis, whereas secondary ossification center is formed in the epiphysis region. So since this primary ossification center is ended, secondary ossification center is formed on this epiphysis region. This one, epiphysis region. By the way, the one reason for this ossification center reason is the perforating and the entering of the entering of blood vessels, just like this blood vessels. So secondary ossification center is formed here. So secondary ossification center is secondary ossification is important to produce a sponge bone here. So the fourth one is formation of articular cartilage and epiphyseal plate. By the way, this is not formed epiphyseal plate by perforating and cartilage changing into bones. This line is known as epiphyseal plate. This is important for growth in length. Okay, important. This is it continues as cartilage for almost 25 years in our life. So this is epiphyseal plate, and this outer layer is known as articular cartilage. So articular cartilage and epiphyseal plate will continue as cartilage. Others will be replaced into bone. So both structures consist of hyaline cartilage, that is epiphyseal plate as well as articular cartilage continues as hyaline cartilage. So this one is important for friction reduction, whereas this is important for by producing new cells. It is important for bone growth. So in general, as a revision, bone is development is just like this. This is development of hyaline cartilage or cartilage model. This is cartilage in the center of the diaphysis calcifies, then develops cavities. This is also the periosteal bed invades the internal cavities and sponge bone begins to form. Sponge will be formed. So this finally it will be just like this. The marrow cavity will be produced, primary ossification center will be occur on this, and marrow cavity will be occurred, and this is a secondary ossification center will be occurred, and sponge bone will be occurred here, and this is epiphyseal plate, and this is articular cartilage will be formed. So this is blood vessels. So this is a process which is long bone or most part of the bone will be occurred in this process. This process is known as endochondral ossification. So this is shows the time as 3 months, birth and childhood to adolescence. So yeah, bone growth. As I told you, growth in bone growth is occur in two forms. One is growth in length, The other is growth in width or thickness. So growth in length occurs at epiphyseal plate, or we can give another name, growth plate. So the activity of epiphyseal plate is the only means by which diaphysis can increase in length. So epiphyseal is important for to increase or to be increased in length. So ossification zone is the region of transformation from cartilage tissue to bone tissue. The process of changing cartilage tissue into bone tissue is known as ossification, or the place is known as the zone, ossification zone. When epiphyseal plate closes, replaced by bone, the epiphyseal line appears and indicates the bone has completed its growth in length. This is mostly occurs in around 25 years. So epiphyseal plate or cartilage growth plate. Cartilage cells are produced by mitosis on epiphyseal side of the plate. Cartilage cells are destroyed and replaced by bone on diaphyseal side of the plate. Between age 18 and 25, epiphyseal plate closes. When epiphyseal plate closes, it forms line. Then cartilage cells stop dividing and bone replaces the cartilage. That is became epiphyseal line. So growth in length stops at about 25 years. On average. So the second type of growth is growth in thickness or growth in width. Bone can grow in thickness or diameter only by oppositional growth. This is in two processes. Osteoblasts beneath brainstem secrete bone matrix onto external bone surface, whereas osteoclasts on endosteal surface remove the bone. So this is bone. So osteoclasts on this endosteal surface, on the inner surface, remove the bone, whereas osteoblasts on the outer surface increase the deposition. So when so this process will become bone just like this. So increase diameter because osteoblasts secrete matrix on the outer surface, whereas osteoclasts degrades on the inner surface. So when they degrade it, it will increase in diameter, whereas when osteoblasts secrete bone matrix on the outer surface, it will increase its thickness. So the other is bone remodeling. Bone remodeling is ongoing replacement of old bone tissue by new bone tissue. The new bone tissue will replace the old bone tissue. This is known as remodeling. Old bone is constantly destroyed by osteoclasts, whereas new bone is constructed by osteoblasts. Osteoblasts forms new bone, whereas osteoclasts destroyed the old bone cells. So continual redistribution of bone matrix along the lines of mechanical stress. So the distal femur is fully remodeled every 4 months in these two processes by two cells. So different bone markings, essential terminology. So depression and openings. From depression and openings, fissures, foramen, meatus, sinus, and sulcus and fossa is under the category of depression and openings. Fissure, a cleft-like opening between adjacent parts of the bone, through which the vessel and the nerve pass, is called fissure, whereas a hole through which blood vessel, nerve, ligament can pass is foramen. A tunnel-like passageway through bone is called meatus, whereas a cavity within bone with narrow opening is called sinus. A groove or depression that accommodates a soft structure such as vessels, nerves, tendon is called sulcus. A depression in or on a bone, generally at joint, is called fossa. So now let us see the processes. So depression opening are important to pass nerves or to locate some nerves and blood vessels, but processes are important for attachment, for muscle attachment. So let us see processes. Condyle is articular processes, for instance, in the joint, condyle, head, and facet. Condyle is large, rounded articular prominence, whereas head is rounded articular projection supported by more structured portion of the bone. faceted, smooth, flat surface of the bone. So when you see this bone, this structure is known as ischial spine, whereas this large one is ischial tuberosity. This area is known as iliac crest. This is processes, and this is trochanter. This region is trochanter. This is into trochanteric line, whereas this one and this one is trochanter. So this one is medial epicondyle. This is condyle. This is the medial epicondyle. This is lateral epicondyle. This is processes. Whereas meatus, this is meatus. This is fossa. This is notch. Whereas this line is known as groove, and this is known as sinus. This is frontal sinus. So this is depressions. So this one is inferior orbital fissure. There is also superior orbital fissure. This is fissures, and this is foramen. So infraorbital foramen. So foramens, fissures, depressions, fossas are under the depressions, whereas these are in the process. In the processes, so different bone markings: process for attachment, tendons and ligament, tubercle, small rounded process, tuberosity, I showed you. So trochanter, line, spine, epicondyle and crest are under the processes. So next part 2 we will contain about the classification of bones and their all terminal bones. About we will see 200 bones in adult, 206 bones will be seen in the next chapter. So please subscribe this channel to get the next videos. So part 2 about 206 bones will be continuous in the next video. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a nice time.